Hi everybody and welcome to another episode of the 5 Bytes podcast. I am your host, Rory Monahan. Let's get right into some news. PowerShell Core 6.0 is now generally available. This is a milestone release as it's the first official version of PowerShell which is supported on Windows, macOS, and Linux operating systems. In order to run on these operating systems, Core is dependent on .NET Core 2.0, a version of .NET which runs on all these operating systems. For those with a lot of PowerShell experience, this release may be bittersweet. It was previously reported that PowerShell may no longer be actively developed, meaning no new features for PowerShell past version 5.1. PowerShell Core also doesn't have as many modules out of the box, as Microsoft's own teams are still coming to grips with the changes to redevelop and redeploy some of the modules we know and love. PowerShell workflows and snap-ins will not work. WMI version 1 commandlets will not work. Desired state configuration also doesn't work currently, but is something which could be added in future releases as it's in development right now. PowerShell ICE will not be supported. You will need to use Visual Studio Code with the PowerShell plugin. Visual Studio Code can be run on any of these operating systems, so this move does make a lot of sense. It would just take some getting used to. As much as there is bitter for those PowerShell experts that have invested a lot of time, there is also some features that are really sweet. Consider also that this is an excellent opportunity for those with PowerShell skills, as they will now be able to script across many different operating systems using code that is familiar to them. PowerShell Core adds support for Docker containers for all the major supported platforms. We used PS Session on Windows using WinRM in the past. Well, now on Linux or macOS, we will be able to use SSH for our remoting purposes and remote scripting purposes. Also in the news this week, Citrix Summit was held in Anaheim. Whilst much of the info doled out of the sessions is strictly under NDA, some interesting tidbits have been published to the public, including new appliances from Flexible IT and Nutanix, which are connected to Citrix Cloud, boasting the ability to allow you to set up new Citrix farms with just a click. Nvidia also demoed the first ever Citrix Zen Motion technology for Nvidia GPU live migration, giving you the ability to migrate VMs which are accelerated with Nvidia vGPU with no user downtime at all. Also this week, Citrix released a new version of Citrix App Layering. A big new feature is the ability to export and import layers. This is very important both for disaster recovery purposes as well as just for importing an app layer from one appliance to another. Hyper-V also got some love in this release. In previous versions, when using Hyper-V and SCVMM with app layering, there was a lot of manual steps, a lot of manual copying virtual disks from one shared to another. It wasn't very streamlined like it had been in previous releases, like Unidesk 3.4 for Hyper-V and RDS. This looks to have improved with the release of the new Hyper-V connector. What is most exciting for me, however, is what's been put into Labs, which is a preview state for pending future releases, and that is user layers which can persist, meaning your desktops can be non-persistent, but anything written during the session to the user layer will persist for that user, making profile management very simple. Also, in the future, we will be able to deploy app layers to any OS, not just the OS it was created against. This is a major change for app layering in Unidesk, but it also appears they have stated the layer may not work, which is certainly the case when trying this with competing layering products like AppVolumes and FlexApp. You may be able to create against one OS and deploy to another in most cases, but in some cases it's just not going to work. So they're setting that expectation, and it's important to go into it realizing that it might not work for every app. Also in the news, the Register reported that VMware is laying off some staff, and the layoff.com seems to corroborate this. I'm very sorry to hear this, and I wish those affected well. Let's check out this episode's hot jobs. The jobs this week are from ExtraHop, a vendor who makes a really great product. They are looking for some senior sales engineers as well as in the development in other areas across multiple geographic regions. I will say, as a customer who has worked with their sales engineers, you must have very strong technical skills and know-how. This episode's scripts, tips, and tricks. In this episode, it's a tip to check out the Team RGE Geek Out 365 event, which will provide 6 hours of excellent content for free on a range of different topics, including GPU, user experience, augmented reality, and more, with great speakers lined up, including Dr. Benny Trish, Rick Dillinger, and more. As always, I'll have the links posted in the description of the YouTube video, as well as on my site. Thank you for listening.